Hey YouTube, it's Petey Two Finger, and this is kind of like a story time video, I guess. I'm relating from my past. Um, I grew up in a religious house. My parents I like to think they were just middle class people. We weren't upper crust, middle class. We didn't vacation, and our vacations were going with my dad on his business trip, staying in the hotel, and maybe going to a movie. That was the extent of our thing that we would do. We would go to the movies maybe 3 or 4 times a year at the most. Um, we did eat out. We did go to Greasy Spoons or family style Greek family restaurants were the places we used to like to go to. And typically that means the food isn't necessarily Greek. It's just that the Greek immigrant people knew how to run a restaurant and serve a good family style meal with a basic American or French inspired menu, where you have gravy and stuff like that at a low price, low cost. So we did eat fast food. Like my mom took us to McDonald's, and we loved going to Taco Bell. We ate at Pizza Hut. So yeah, we were middle class. Now, when my dad died, I was young, and he really kind of ruled with an iron fist. My dad was known to violence. So when he died, my brother had really been rebelling. He had gotten in trouble with the law. There was just kind of incident after incident of things happening that were bad news. And he ended up going away to the Navy. He got in some trouble, and rather than locking him up, it's a case of, hey, this is just a kid who's outgrown this small town and he's rebelling, and we make sure that he goes into the service, and that'll straighten him out. This is what they used to do. Your first offense, they'd cut you a break. They wouldn't throw you to the wolves in the penitentiary. So I was at home, my younger brother, and then my mom. We went to Florida once after my dad died, and that was it for the family vacations. Although once I got out of the picture, they bought a timeshare and they all get together in Florida, except for us. We're not invited because I'm bad. I don't go to church. If you go to church, you can smoke crack whenever you want.
Not at church.
Not at church. Anyway, I rebelled at that point in my life, and I went after music. Is what I did. I started playing bass. I met this guy who was in my life for a while. We were friends. We were close. He has an alcohol problem to the point where it really affects. You can say that somebody's an alcoholic, and what does that mean? Well, you have more than one sip of alcohol a year, you're an alcoholic. But what I'm calling this guy out for his problem, it means that I'm unable to have a relationship with him because his alcoholism affects so bad. It's really bad. And like you know, I I love the guy like a brother, you could say, but I can't be around him. I can't enable him. I can't pretend like everything is okay because he has endangered his own life many times with his passing out. He drinks to pass out every day. And he can't really get anything done or move forward or in any direction because he's just consumed by his alcoholism. Anyway, that guy was, when I met him, one of the reasons that I became his friend was he had the same taste in music as me, and he told me that he wanted to be a singer. And that just blew my mind. I was like, I never met anybody that said they wanted to be a singer. You back then in what would it have been, 1985, 1987 in there, you would have wanted to be a guitar player or maybe a drummer, but you wouldn't want to be a singer. So me, as considering myself a guitar person, I was attracted to this guy, and I met his group of friends. He invited me over to his house. His parents tolerated us drinking and smoking weed in the house. So that was it. I was with this guy. We put together a band that led to a bunch of other bands and playing up until 96 when I quit. And he continued singing a little bit. I went into home recording, and then the family band happened for me, and I still make music. Now he no longer makes music, but this guy was like kind of my best friend for one period of my life. I had a few different people that I considered like besties. The one guy, he was a drug dealer, alcoholic. He loved to drink beer, and he lost his life from shooting cocaine intravenously. So I've got a thing, like I don't like cocaine. I just don't like it. I don't like being around people who do that. And even back then, coming out of this, like I was in church every Sunday. I went to private schools, and I was raised very much religiously, and being around people who are constantly wasted, it weighed on me, even though I was using too, but it made me feel like I was doing something wrong. Your spirit lets you know when things are out of whack. And so the whole time that I'm hanging around with these people, there was just this feeling like I was slumming it. Like I was kind of throwing my life away. You know what I mean? Like the decisions that I were making were not the best for me as far as putting a good financial situation where I'm going to be able to provide and have a family. And all of those people that I met, that I partied with, none of them are still married. They all got divorced within the first 5 years after getting married. Because I saw that. I mean, you get older, you're hanging out with this crowd of people, and well, this one's shacked up with this one's shacked up with that one. There's kind of a lot of shuffling around that goes on early on when they first start dating. They're all dating each other, and I stayed out of it. And like I said, they made a comment. We were at a party when the kids were younger, and the girl said, "None of us are with the same people anymore. We're all divorced." And I said, because Donna was there. And I was like, their response was, "You don't count because you weren't really in this crew.
You didn't date everybody here, like they all.
I was Dan's friend. I didn't date all these girls, and it was, yeah, I didn't date all you girls because you were sluts." I mean, if you're going out with a guy and every time you get mad with him, you're jumping into some other guy's car and you're going with him, and then the next day you're making back up, I don't want to be in that type of relationship. I never was in that type of relationship that I know of, but I really don't think that was ever the case for me. Not that I had some doozy bullshit stuff go on, but that was usually, it wasn't so much my choice of some other girl coming and glomming onto me for a short while, and me, being too dumb to realize what's going on. But this feeling of malaise, or like that I'm slumming it hanging out with these people that at times they act like Cro-Magnon, like walking around a fire, throwing bottles and sticks at other guys because they're just drunk, and that's what you do when you get a six-pack in you, is you start a little war around the campfire to prove your machismo. And all of that stuff, like, let's say maybe I've taken some psychedelics, and then this stuff kicks off. That's the stuff that sticks with you. Like I don't have any tattoos, but I don't have hepatitis C or venereal disease. You know what I mean? So particularly, there was certain people that were really bad where I knew I shouldn't be hanging around with them. My drinking buddy, the guy who died from shooting cocaine, his name was Billy. He was bad news. That guy was bad. He was just a evil person. Now, his soul, he didn't live. He kind of lived that criminal code of lifestyle, because when you meet people in the counterculture, some of them really, really follow this criminal code where, like, you never call a cop, never rat anybody out. Certain things that's criminal code. And while I say this guy was evil, he was generally a very good person to others. Okay, pretty much on a basic level, but really all that he cared about was getting fucked up, and that was the thing that always bothered me, was the fact that here we are on this beautiful earth where when we're young, our needs are pretty basic. You need 3 meals a day and a roof over your head, and you can enjoy the simpler things. And when you become an addict, those things don't matter to you anymore. You can't get the same satisfaction over eating a lunch, unless you're fucked up. So that's the type of stuff that was always weighing on me and keeping this company of basically kind of lower end criminals. There were people that stood out. And I wanted to talk about one of those people today. He wasn't my friend, he was my singer's friend, and my singer really looked up to this guy, and this guy was a thief. He was into robbing houses, and basically anything that wasn't chained down. Now, when I first met my pal, this singer guy, this guy that we're talking about today, I guess we'll try to call him JT. He was one of those 2-letter people, but we'll call him JT. Those were not the letters that he was known by, but we're going to call him that. And I know this guy is still alive. I believe he has a daughter, and I don't want to slander him or say anything terrible about anybody, so I'm going to try to just be as honest about this and as true about it. But when I became friends with this guy, Dan, his friendship with this JT guy was terminating because JT had gotten in so much trouble that Dan's parents didn't want him in the picture anymore. Where at some point they were open friends, and this guy was younger, and he hadn't kind of gone as far into that criminal lifestyle. They were friends. So I'm coming in, I'm friends with this guy, and he's like always talking about this other guy who was like a swashbuckler. He was real confident. He had no problem with getting girls, where Danny was a little bit more on the shy end of that. So, and I wasn't like the guy who you wanted to go out with to pick up chicks, because I didn't think about that and I didn't care. I cared about one thing, and that was guitars. So, I remember just hearing all these stories, and the one day I was with Danny and we went over there, and he's like, I'm going to park here, and go way down the street and go up and knock on his door. And then, like, a lot of time transpired. And then, like, they came running back. And this guy, JT, is like, who's this? Like, I'm, a threat. He was very agitated. There had been some type of a confrontation, something involving his parents and this girlfriend. It was something with, I don't remember. I was with him for maybe 5 minutes. We drove him somewhere because we were supposed to, like, I was going to go get introduced to this guy and we were going to party and hang out. And it was a very brief 5 minute thing where it was a lot of drama. He bailed on us right away, and I never saw the guy again. Now, a little while later, the psychedelics have entered the scene, and there was a guy that we worked with who was a special guy. And I found out, I knew that he smoked pot and that he was a music fan. He loved Pink Floyd. His dad was not in the picture for his whole life. And then all of a sudden I find out he's taking psychedelics. And I said, where are you getting, if you don't mind, who's getting you the LSD? And he says, Dan. So I'm thinking, Dan, this guy has got mental issues. It's irresponsible to give someone with psychological problems LSD. It could be a time bomb. At that time, I found out that this guy's dad had come back into his life and that he was asked to house sit for his father and instigated a week of acid parties at this house. So I ended up there. You may have heard me talk about this dude. We'll call him Paul. Paul is tripping and he is getting goofy. He's saying shit like, it's my party, I can do anything I want. And he has a dark beer and he's splashing it on the walls. And it's staining, it's this brown liquid pouring down the walls. And he's tripping. He's taken like 3 hits of acid. Then out comes a handgun. And the doors is on, So right away I put the Dark Side of the Moon on, and I'm in control of the needle so I can skip songs like On the Run and Money and just keep it to the mellower, Us and Them, Breathe, Reprise. And we had to work on Paul for about 15 minutes to get him to relinquish the handgun. But at one point, he went with the gun in front of a stand-up mirror and then smashed that mirror with his forehead. We did get the gun away from him because there was like, 10 people there with their girlfriends. And pretty much all of the guys, the alpha male types, were working on him to have him give the gun. Now, throughout this week, things kind of got out of hand, and there was a lot of beer spilt and stupid shit that went on that was where this place was damaged. Dan ended up going there with this JT character, and he kicked the door in. They went in. He got the handgun and whatever else he wanted out of there. They did a bunch of cocaine in there. And then when Paul's father came back, the house was damaged and his handgun was gone. And from what I heard, his dad became so upset at Paul that he kicked him back out of his life. So those are my only experiences with this JT guy. He obviously made some wrong choices. I'm not saying he's a horrible person or a bad guy. We have this element in our society of young people who start to go And you know, it's addiction. It's people don't continue to steal because they get off on the high of stealing, although that's part of it. But if you are an addict, if you're a drug addicted alcoholic, this kind of really gives you a lot more reasoning to continue committing felonies. So, our society, we need to recognize these at risk kids because it happens when you're 15. That's when this happens. And rather than locking them up, we need to figure out ways where we can treat addiction. That's what we as a society need to do. Now, a huge part of it could be just fucking getting him on some legal weed. Can the guy make it through life with just having a little alcohol and give him what he give him the weed? Is that going to cut it, or is it going to go? Do we have to have the cocaine? And I don't know. Those questions are out of my hand, but I certainly think I know in my case, if it was legal when I was 15, it would have made my life a lot simpler because I smoked for years, and that was because I had a traumatic childhood. There was a lot of abuse going on. So that's my story. This guy JT, I looked him up because his name popped in my head. I looked him up and I found some court documents. Now I have redacted some of the information and I'm just going to fill in the blanks. We'll call it Chicago. This is the mid 80s. The defendant was charged with theft of a motorcycle in Chicago and a residential burglary in a home in Chicago, respectively. Prior to the trial, the defendant agreed to cooperate with the Chicago police as an undercover informant for the purpose of bargaining with the state's attorney to reduce charges against him. As a result, the state reduced non-probationable residential burglary charge to commercial burglary. In the 80s here, the defendant pleaded guilty to theft and burglary charges. He was sentenced to 4 years probation and ordered to pay $1,250 fine within 6 months under the theft conviction. He was also sentenced to serve 6 months of periodic imprisonment based upon his conviction. On the burglary conviction, he was sentenced to 30 months probation, which was to run concurrently with his theft sentence. The court granted the defendant a stay until this certain date. It turns out that our friend, legend, JT, was a cop. He was a narc. He was an undercover. Who would have thought? Whenever that name came up, I just had a feeling like, don't get involved. You know, when it comes to, I had a friend who lived not even a mile away, looked up to this guy who was a little older, who, it was the same story. He started breaking into cars. It was stealing radar detectors back when I was a kid, is what kids used to do. They would steal car stereos and radar detectors. Then usually they would either get straightened out or get shipped off to the Marines or start robbing houses was what you would graduate to. And my friend idolized a similar guy who ended up going away for a long time. And my feeling is that if that guy wouldn't have gone away, my friend would have ended up getting involved in that lifestyle, and he may ended up, who knows, you know. I saw my friend break a guy's jaw with one punch at a party. He was a kind of a badass. You didn't want to be on his wrong side, which was very easy to do. So coming up, we see me going after this lifestyle and real quickly, like, I liked what it felt like when I smoked pot. I liked what it felt like when I got a six-pack of beer in me. So that was my excuse of getting into that world. But then quickly realizing that those people, they saw me that I didn't fit. I was always singled out and kind of picked on or joked on, or you have the big guy at the party who's walking around with a squirt gun would squirt me in the face with a fear of that I would break his jaw with one punch. So that kind of uncomfortable upbringing and that feeling of like I don't belong here, I'm doing something wrong. People can tell when you're in that state. It's not a good place to be socially. There was a lot of me kind of hiding in the corner at a kegger, hoping that I don't get picked out as the guy who's going to get his ass beat at the party. Because there always was. Every party that I ever went to that didn't have a band had fights. All of the parties that had bands, very little fighting. Very little fighting. I went to one kegger where the guy jumps a car. He used to build a ramp with a Volkswagen. They would put all this plywood up, and he would take another car and jump a swimming pool or whatever it was. And he did that every year, and that was one of the best parties I ever went to. And at the end, he jumped the car, and then the cops came, and perfect. Again, I'm not here judging this guy. I wanted to make the video because I found this information out, and it was like you were right to feel uneasy about when this guy's name was brought up. You were right because he was involved in some illegal activities, and he was also an undercover cop, which I just couldn't believe it. I could not believe it. I'm not on speaking terms with that guy, my old pal Danny, but I sent him the info. I said, interesting information here. Your old pal turned out to be a UC. And I gave him a link to the thing. So who knows if he'll read it. I know the last I heard about Danny, he picked up his new ex-wife. He goes after these kind of just maybe not the best type of women. He seems to catch them cheating. And then they'll be around for a while, like living there, and he can't seem to break free from them. Right now, what I heard was his new ex-old lady has her old man living there in his condo. So I can only wish him the best, and I do, like I said, I miss him. We were like brothers. We were friends. We had a lot of common ground about music, and but he was completely different than me too, which was why he was such a good, interesting person to talk to. And I only wish him the best, but at the same time, I can't have like relationships where you're doing everything and the other person is incapable of giving anything back. I can't do that. And that's what a lot of my relationships were. A lot of them were just like that. And I've learned that those are not the healthiest thing for me. So if you're that type of person, I tend to not have anything to do with you because I've got my own thing. And I could kind of care less what anybody thinks about what I do or the music I make. If you love it, if you hate it, it's all the same to me, you know. It is what it is. I know what I'm doing isn't on some grandiose scale. I know that there are people out there who are talented, who are really good at this, and that's not me. So I don't expect people to appreciate what I do because I understand. It's just not that good, really. Okay, you guys. If you're out there and you're in one of these relationships, think about what you can do to kick that person to the curb because we don't deserve to feel like were in a relationship with someone who you're constantly going over to their house and spending time with them and waiting on them because they're late or whatever it may be. If you're in an unhealthy relationship, you know it, and you need to get out of those. So take care of yourselves. Be safe. If you're in a position where you don't always feel comfortable or your gut feeling is telling you something, listen to it. That stuff is there to keep us alive. Take care of yourself and peace.